Welcome dear students. In the previous video, we have learnt about what is middle ear and its various boundaries. But middle ear cleft not only includes the middle ear but also structures such as mastoid antrum, Aditus antrum, eustachian tube and various other structures. So let us complete learning about the middle ear in this video. First, let us learn about mastoid. Mastoid antrum. What exactly is mastoid antrum? We know that it is present posterior to the middle ear. But what is it exactly? It is a large air-containing space in the upper part of mastoid bone. And this communicates with the middle ear, with the attic part of middle ear, epitympanic part of middle ear, through an opening through a communication called as Aditus antrum. So mastoid antrum is a large air-containing space that is present in the upper part of mastoid. And it communicates with the attic. Through Aditus antrum, that is an opening. We have learnt about this Aditus antrum while learning about the posterior wall of middle ear also. Yes. Now, why we are learning all of them together is because there is a continuous mucous membrane that is lining the middle ear proper, the eustachian tube and the mastoid antrum also. So, disease from one part can very easily spread to the neighboring parts. So, they all function together as one functional unit. Disease of the middle ear can go to mastoid and vice versa. So, let us study about the boundaries of mastoid antrum also. The roof of mastoid, we have already learned that roof of middle ear is tegmen tympani and the same bone continues as tegmen antri forming the roof of mastoid antrum. So the roof of mastoid antrum is tegmen antri, which is a small plate of bone, a thin plate of bone that is continuous with tegmen tympani. Next, the lateral wall. What is present on the lateral wall of middle ear? It is the tympanic membrane. And for mastoid, it is a small plate of bone. A small plate of bone that is around 1.5 centimeters thick. But this is very, very important because we have a landmark known as suprameatal triangle or McEwen's triangle. Suprameatal triangle or McEwen's triangle. Now this suprameatal or McEwen's triangle is a superficial landmark while approaching mastoid antrum. For surgical approach, this is a very important landmark and also it's an important question. We need to understand about the borders of suprameatal triangle to exactly locate it. So first, let us write them down and then look at the picture. It is a triangle as the name itself suggests. And in this triangle, the three parts are the superior border is formed by temporal line. Temporal line is present on the temporal bone, and its anterior border is formed by the posterior-superior margin of bony part of external auditory canal. Now we know that the external auditory canal has a cartilaginous part, outer 1/3, and inner 2/3 is the bony part. The posterior-superior margin of this bony external auditory canal opening forms the anterior part. And the posterior part of this triangle is formed by a tangent to the external auditory canal opening. Now when I write this down, it might not make much sense, but when you look at the picture, it will be easily understood. So let us identify the suprameatal triangle in this picture. The superior border is formed by temporal line, and this is the temporal line. The superior border is formed by the temporal line, and this is the temporal line. Next, the anterior border is formed by posterior-superior margin of external auditory canal opening. Now we know that the external auditory canal is running like this, and its posterior-superior margin on the other side. So you can see that this is the external auditory canal opening, and its posterior-superior margin is this. This is the posterior-superior margin. This is the posterior-superior margin. Superior border is formed by the temporal line, and this is the temporal line that is present on the temporal bone. Next, the anterior margin of this triangle is formed by posterior-superior margin of the bony external auditory canal. The external auditory canal is running like this, and its posterior-superior part. So let us identify that in this picture. This is the external auditory canal opening, and the posterior-superior margin is this. This is the posterior-superior margin. And next, the posterior part is a tangent drawn to the external auditory canal. What is a tangent? It is a line that touches a circle at just one point, and it is perpendicular to the radius at that point. So if we consider this to be our anterior border, a tangent drawn to this is somewhat like this. So this in between, this area is the suprameatal triangle. And the suprameatal triangle or the McEwan's triangle is an important superficial landmark. It is a surgical landmark. Going via the suprameatal triangle will lead us into the interior of mastoid antrum. So next, we have learnt about the lateral margin. Now, let us learn about the next part, that is Aditus ad antrum. What is Aditus ad antrum? It is an opening, a communication through which mastoid antrum communicates with middle ear cavity. Between mastoid antrum and middle ear cavity, middle ear proper. Let us look into the boundaries of Aditus ad antrum. On the medial side, the Aditus ad antrum has a bony prominence of the horizontal canal. Bony prominence of horizontal canal. What is the horizontal canal? On the medial wall of middle ear also we are seeing that there is a prominence of the lateral semicircular canal, the bony prominence. It's a part of inner ear, bony part of inner ear. That bulge is seen on the medial wall of middle ear. It is also seen on the medial wall of Aditus ad antrum. Bony prominence of the horizontal semicircular canal. And what is present on its lateral side? This is the Aditus ad antrum, the opening. It is on top. Medially, there is the prominence of horizontal semicircular canal, and laterally we have a structure known as fossa incudis. What is fossa incudis? to which the short process of incus attaches itself, that is fossa incudis, to which the short process of incus is attached. Incus is one of the middle ear ossicles. This fossa incudis is present on the lateral side of Aditus ad antrum. So you've got an idea about where Aditus ad antrum is present. So with this, next let us move on to the contents of mastoid antrum. As I told earlier, it is an air containing cavity. So what is present inside the mastoid? Mastoid air cells are present. Mastoid air cells are present. So with all these air cells, so this is how the mastoid bone looks with all the air cells present. These are all air cells. So there is a honeycomb of air cells underneath. Aren't they all looking like a honeycomb? Yes. Honeycomb of air cells are present underneath the mastoid bone. So based on the development of these air cells, mastoid is of three types based on development. Let us see what are those three types. Based on development of air cells. The first variety is well pneumatized. Well pneumatized means the air cells are well developed. It is also called as cellular. Well pneumatized or cellular. The second type is diploitic. Diploitic variety has narrow spaces and fewer air cells. The air cells are not so well developed in diploitic variety. And third variety is sclerotic variety or acellular variety. In this, there are no air cells or marrow spaces. Most well developed is well pneumatized or cellular, and the least developed is sclerotic or acellular type. This is based on the development of air cells. Now, based on the location of air cells, we have various names for them based on location. What are they? First one is zygomatic cells. Where are they present? On the zygomatic process inside, underneath. The air cells that are present are called as zygomatic cells. Next, tegmen cells. Next, we have perisinus cells. Now, these are all based on the location. And why is it important? When we take an X-ray, when there is some disease in the mastoid, we should be able to identify exactly which part is affected. So, for that, we have identified them based on their geographic location. And then we have retrofacial cells. Perilabyrinthine cells. These perilabyrinthine cells, they are present above, below and behind the labyrinth. What is labyrinth? The inner ear, the bony part of inner ear. Around that there are these perilabyrinthine cells. And then we have peritubal cells. What is tube? Eustachian tube. So they are present around the eustachian tube. The cells present around the eustachian tube, the air spaces, they are called as peritubal air spaces or peritubal air cells. Tip cells. They are present on the tip of the mastoid antrum. That is over here. Somewhere here. These are the tip cells. And these tip cells are quite large. I can say they are the largest group of air cells. And then we have marginal cells. And finally, squamosal cells. Okay. So these are the various types of air cells based on their location in the mastoid bone. Next, let us understand the fact that mastoid bone develops from the squamous part and from the petrous part of temporal bone. There is initially a separate squamous bone and a petrous bone, and later both of them unite. And their junction is called as the petrosquamosal suture. And mastoid bone develops from both of them. So sometimes this petrosquamosal suture persists even in adult life as a bony plate. Okay, let us write this down. Mastoid develops from petrous bone and squamous bone. Okay, and the joining part between petrous bone and squamous bone is known as petrosquamous suture. The joints in the skull are known as sutures. So sometimes this petrosquamous suture persists as a bony plate. And this bony plate separates the superficial cells from the deep petrosal cells. Now all of a sudden, why are we learning about the development of mastoid and how this bone is present as a bony plate? Because this persistent bony plate is an important structure. It is known as Corner's septum. And if at all this Corner's septum is present, unless we break through that Corner's septum, we cannot explore the mastoid cavity completely. The moment we see a bone, we generally think that is the end of it. But no, that is just present in between. It is dividing the mastoid. It is dividing the superficial cells of mastoid from the deep cells. So if at all we do not have an understanding about this Corner's septum, it is possible that we do an incomplete removal of the disease during mastoidectomy. Sometimes when the mastoid is very seriously infected, we do a procedure, a surgery known as mastoidectomy, where all these air cells of mastoid are removed. And that time we have to be mindful about this Corner's septum. In case the septum is present, we have to go beyond the Corner's septum for complete eradication of the disease. So, because of the Corner's septum, what is the problem? Incomplete removal of disease during mastoidectomy can happen. During mastoidectomy may happen because of Corner's septum. I hope I'm clear about this. So with this, we complete learning about the mastoid antrum. It is a cavity that is in continuation with the middle ear. It is communicating with the middle ear through an opening called as Aditus ad antrum. And it is made up of large air-containing cavities, air cells. And based on their development, there are three types of air cells: well pneumatized, sclerotic, and in between both of them is the diploidic type. And based on their location, we have various names. And coroner's septum may persist as a bony plate, and if that is present, we have to be mindful about it and go beyond the coroner's septum to completely eradicate the disease while performing mastoidectomy. With this, I complete mastoid antrum. But we have to learn a few more structures in the middle ear, the contents of the middle ear. What exactly is present in the middle ear? We have learnt about its boundaries, all the 6 walls. But what is present inside the middle ear? The first thing that comes to our mind are the 3 bony ossicles. Yes, there are 3 tiny bones inside the middle ear which we call as ossicles. Let us study one by one in detail. The first ossicle is malleus. All of these bones have common names also. So the common name of malleus is hammer. Let us look at this picture of malleus and understand its various parts. Malleus consists of a head, there is a neck, and it has one handle that is known as the manubrium. This is the handle or manubrium of malleus. Then there is a lateral process. And we also have an anterior process. This picture, we are looking at malleus from the front side. Actually, it is in attachment with the tympanic membrane on one side and with the incus bone on another side. The picture that you are seeing here is in another orientation of malleus with the same parts. This is the part that articulates with the incus bone. To show that, I have put another picture. So the head and neck part of malleus are present in the attic. They are present in the epitympanum of middle ear. And the head of malleus articulates with incus. As you can see here, this is the head part that has an articulation surface for the next bone, for the incus bone. So the head articulates with incus. Head articulates with incus. The head and neck are present in the attic, and the handle or manubrium is very important, that is embedded in the tympanic membrane. If we can correlate this with the tympanic membrane anatomy, you would remember that on the tympanic membrane, we can see a handle being attached, a bone being attached, and that is the handle of malleus. And the lowermost part of this handle or manubrium draws the tympanic membrane inside, giving it a concave appearance because the central part of tympanic membrane is drawn inside, and that is because this handle or manubrium is attached to the tympanic membrane. It is embedded inside the tympanic membrane. And on the topmost part of this handle, there is another lateral knob-like projection, and that knob-like projection is the lateral process. If you remember, from that knob, we get 2 folds on either side of the tympanic membrane, and they are the anterior malleolar fold and the posterior malleolar fold. So that is the lateral process. Next, we have the anterior process, that is projecting anteriorly. I hope you are able to correlate it with the anatomy of tympanic membrane also. So these are the various parts of malleus, and this is another image of malleus that you can see with the articulation surface for incus clearly. The next bone is incus. The second bone is incus. And the common name for incus is anvil. This is a picture of incus bone, and incus has three parts. They are the body. This is the body of incus that articulates with the head of malleus. It has one short process and also one long process. The long process of incus is hanging vertically downwards. So the long process is in articulation with the head of stapes. You can see another articulation surface here, that is for the head of stapes. So incus bone has a body, a short process and a long process. The body is in articulation with malleus and the long process is in articulation with stapes. The next bone is stapes, also known as stirrups. The common name for stapes is stirrups. This is a picture of stapes, and the stapes consists of a head. The head of stapes is in articulation with the incus and a neck. Apart from head and neck, it has an anterior crura and a posterior crura, and they are these two. These are anterior and posterior crura. And finally, this structure that you are seeing here is the most important part of stapes, and that is the foot plate of stapes. This foot plate of stapes is also known as oval window. It forms the oval window. It is held in the oval window by an annular ligament. Oval window is an opening on the lateral wall of inner ear, and that opening is closed by this foot plate of stapes. And the foot plate of stapes is held in the oval window by annular ligament. Okay, so this is about the three ossicles of middle ear: malleus, incus and stapes. Now it is very important that you be able to identify these pictures. Now a question as simple as this might be asked in an entrance exam like NEET PG. It might appear very simple to you right now, but sometimes while revision we tend to ignore the basics. But these are the questions that can very much be asked in the exam, and you might be surprised to know that many people made a mistake in this question also, because our orientation is always about learning. We sometimes fail to imagine that picture in our head. We must have photographic memory of images while learning anatomy. When I say malleus, and if you close your eyes, you should be able to see this picture. See the picture of malleus. Similarly with incus also. Stapes, nobody will get confused. It has a distinct image. But malleus and incus are also very different, but I don't know why sometimes it's possible that somebody can get confused. So please remember these images very clearly in your head. Okay. Next, after learning about bones, let us learn about the muscles present in middle ear. There are two muscles present. The first one is tensor tympani. When we are learning about any muscle, we must study it under four headings: origin, insertion, function and nerve supply. From where is it originating, where is it inserting, why is it present, what is it doing and what is its nerve supply. This is the basic information that we must have. So tensor tympani originates from the cartilaginous part of eustachian tube and the greater wing of sphenoid plus its own bony canal. If you remember, while we were learning about the anterior wall of middle ear, we learnt that there is an opening called eustachian tube and there is a canal for tensor tympani. there is a bony canal for tensor tympani. Now the eustachian tube also has a cartilaginous part and a bony part, and this tensor tympani is coming right from the cartilaginous bone. It takes a little origin from the greater wing of sphenoid plus its own bony canal. So, cartilaginous part of eustachian tube greater wing of sphenoid and its own bony canal. There is no specific name for this bony canal. It's called the bony canal of tensor tympani. Now all these structures are present anteriorly. So this muscle is coming from the anterior side and it is running posteriorly. It's running in antero-posterior direction. So where is it inserting? The tensor tympani becomes a tendon, and this tendon inserts on the neck or on the upper part of the handle of malleus. So, it is inserting on the neck or the upper part of handle of malleus, somewhere here. That is where the tensor tympani is inserting. From the neck arises the handle. So, either the neck or upper part of handle of malleus. Handle of malleus is also known as manubrium. Yes. Okay, we have learnt about its origin and insertion. But why is this muscle present? What is its function? The action of this muscle is that it pulls the handle of malleus medially. Now, when the handle of malleus is pulled medially, what happens to the tympanic membrane? The handle of malleus is embedded in the tympanic membrane. And when the handle of malleus is pulled medially, the tympanic membrane also gets tensed. The tympanic membrane cannot go inside completely, so it stretches, it becomes tensed. And what happens if the tympanic membrane is stressed? It reduces the force of vibrations. Why all this occurs? In response to loud noises. When there is a very loud noise, this tensor tympani muscle contracts, and when it contracts, because it is inserted on the neck of malleus, the handle of malleus gets pulled medially and the tympanic membrane will get tensed, and this will reduce the force of vibrations. So, tensor tympani has a protective action against loud noises. That is its basic function. And how is it performing that function? By pulling the handle of malleus. It pulls the handle of malleus. In which direction is it pulling? Medially. It pulls the handle of malleus medially and tenses the tympanic membrane. And this will reduce the force of vibrations. In response to a loud noise. So this is the action of tensor tympani. It's a muscle originating on the anterior side. It is running posteriorly. It is inserting on the handle of malleus, upper part of handle of malleus. And when it contracts, it pulls the handle of malleus medially, tenses the tympanic membrane and reduces the force of vibrations. Final point is about its nerve supply. It is a first arch muscle, so it is supplied by mandibular nerve. Mandibular nerve is a trigeminal nerve branch. Third branch of trigeminal cranial nerve, mandibular nerve, V3. Okay. The next muscle in middle ear is stapedius muscle. Stapedius. This is a very small muscle And once again, if you remember the anatomy, the boundaries of middle ear, while studying about the posterior wall of middle ear, we have studied that there is a bony projection called pyramid on the posterior wall, and that bony projection gives origin to stapedius muscle. Origin of stapedius muscle is from the bony pyramid, the bony projection pyramid present on posterior wall of middle ear, and it inserts stapedius stapes, posterior surface of neck of stapes. Now please understand that stapedius is coming from the posterior wall and it is running anteriorly. Tensor tympani from anterior wall, it is running posteriorly, and stapedius is originating from the posterior wall and running anteriorly. So what is the function of stapedius? So when stapedius contracts, it pulls the stapes posteriorly and prevents excess oscillation of stapes. What is its action? It pulls the stapes posteriorly and prevents excess oscillation. So this also has a protective role. It protects the ear from loud noises. And what is the nerve supply? It is a second arch muscle. So it is supplied by facial nerve, the seventh cranial nerve. Okay. So I hope the two muscles of middle ear are clear, tensor tympani and stapedius. Both of them are playing a protective role. And tensor tympani is supplied by mandibular nerve, whereas stapedius is supplied by facial nerve. After studying about the bones and muscles in middle ear proper, let us learn about the innervation of middle ear. Innervation of middle ear. The entire middle ear is supplied by a plexus of nerves called as tympanic plexus. Tympanic plexus. Again, correlation with middle ear anatomy. On the medial wall of middle ear, you can see a bulge known as promontory, and on that bulge a plexus of nerves was present and we called that tympanic plexus. So, this tympanic plexus is formed by branches from glossopharyngeal nerve. Glossopharyngeal nerve is the ninth cranial nerve. Plus, it also has contributions from the branches of internal carotid plexus. It takes branches from internal carotid plexus. These two together form the tympanic plexus, which is present on the promontory of middle ear. The bulge is the promontory. It is present on that bulge. It is present on the promontory. And what all does this supply? The tympanic plexus supplies first the medial surface of tympanic membrane. Again, correlation with tympanic membrane anatomy. While studying about the nerve supply of tympanic membrane, we have studied that the lateral surface is supplied by 5th nerve and 10th nerve, vagus nerve. While the medial surface, the entire medial surface is supplied by glossopharyngeal nerve. And from where is that coming? From the tympanic plexus only. And it has a special name. That branch has a special name. What is it? Jacobson's nerve. The branch of vagus nerve is called as Arnold's nerve, and this branch from glossopharyngeal nerve, its special name was Jacobson's nerve. And how did we remember it? J sound, Jacobson's nerve. Okay. So it is supplying the medial surface of tympanic membrane. It is supplying the entire middle ear, the cavity of middle ear, and also mastoid antrum part also. So common nerve supply to all of them. Plus in addition, it also gives secretomotor fibers to the parotid gland. Secretomotor fibers to parotid gland. This is about the innervation of middle ear. Anyhow, because we are learning about nerves, let us learn about cauda tympani nerve. What is cauda tympani? It is a branch of facial nerve, a special nerve. This cauda tympani arises from posterior canalicular wall, posterior canaliculus. Now before we study any further about cauda tympani, the facial nerve is emerging from the medial wall. It takes a turn, it runs vertically in the posterior wall of middle ear. Just behind the pyramid, we have learned that the facial nerve is running vertically. From this posterior canaliculus part arises the cauda tympani nerve, and it runs in the middle ear cavity. It runs between the handle of malleus and the long process of incus. Between the handle of malleus and long process of incus. This cauda tympani nerve carries taste sensation from anterior 2/3 of the tongue. It has a sensory action, and also it supplies secretomotor fibers to submaxillary and sublingual salivary glands. Parotid received secretomotor fibers from tympanic plexus, whereas these two are receiving from the cauda tympani nerve. So because this is one of the structure that we see in the middle ear, I have discussed about cauda tympani also. So these are all the structures that you see in the middle ear proper, in the middle ear cavity. The 3 bones, 2 muscles, and all the innervation, tympanic plexus plus this cauda tympani nerve. And as I have already told initially, they are all lined by a common mucous membrane that is continuous throughout the entire middle ear, eustachian tube, and also mastoid antrum. They have a common mucous membrane, and that is responsible for the spread of diseases. Next, let us learn about the blood supply of middle ear. Blood supply of middle ear. There are 2 main arteries that are supplying, and also there are a few minor arteries that are present. So the 2 main ones, let us look at them first. Anterior tympanic branch of maxillary artery. Anterior tympanic branch of maxillary artery. What is the middle ear also known as? Tympanum. So, anterior tympanic branch of maxillary artery. Then, the next artery is stylomastoid branch of posterior auricular artery. Stylomastoid branch of posterior auricular artery. The stylomastoid branch of posterior auricular artery supplies middle ear plus mastoid air cells. And maxillary artery as well as the posterior auricular artery are both branches of external carotid artery. So, from the external carotid artery, we have maxillary artery and posterior auricular artery. From the maxillary artery is coming anterior tympanic branch, and from the posterior auricular artery is coming the stylomastoid branch. And these two form the major contributions to middle ear. As I said, we also have a few minor contributions. Let us see what they are. Minor contributions come from first, petrosal branch of middle meningeal artery. Petrosal branch of middle meningeal artery. From where is the middle meningeal artery coming from? Middle meningeal artery. It is a branch of maxillary artery only. And maxillary artery, as we already know, is a branch of ECA. Next, superior tympanic branch of middle meningeal artery. So, this middle meningeal artery is giving two branches. One is the petrosal branch and one is the superior tympanic branch. This is also contributing. Then we get a branch from artery to pterygoid canal. There is an artery whose name is artery to pterygoid canal, and that artery is also giving a branch. Branch from artery to pterygoid canal. And finally, now this artery to pterygoid canal is also a branch of external carotid artery. Then at the end we have, and the last contribution is from keratico-tympanic branch. Keratico-tympanic branch of internal carotid artery. All the other branches are from external carotid artery, whereas there is a small contribution from internal carotid artery in the form of keratico-tympanic branch. So, this is about blood supply of middle ear. From the external carotid artery, we get maxillary artery, and maxillary artery gives anterior tympanic branch, which is a major supply, and it also gives middle meningeal artery. And from the middle meningeal artery, there are two branches, petrosal branch and superior tympanic branch. Then, from the external carotid artery again, there is another branch called as posterior auricular artery. That is giving stylomastoid branch, which is forming a major contribution. And then we have an artery called as artery of pterygoid canal, and that's also giving a branch, which is from the external carotid artery itself. From the internal carotid artery, we get a small contribution called as keratico-tympanic branch. So, with this, we complete learning about middle ear. So, first, while studying middle ear anatomy, we must learn about the 6 boundaries, and that will give us a basic outline, a view, the orientation of middle ear, and then we can study about mastoid antrum and the contents of middle ear, plus some minor topics such as nerve supply and blood supply of middle ear. With this, I complete the anatomy of middle ear. Thank you very much. Happy learning.